Good evening, George Will here. Breaking news tonight from sources with direct knowledge of the situation. A confidential audio recording has surfaced that threatens to dismantle the carefully constructed public narrative the Duchess of Sussex has maintained for 7 years. The recording, obtained exclusively by our investigative team and authenticated by three independent forensic audio specialists, captures Meghan Markle making statements that directly contradict every public claim she has made about her motivations for entering the royal family. This is not speculation. This is not tabloid gossip. This is documented evidence that could trigger legal consequences, international embarrassment, and complete collapse of the commercial empire built on credibility that no longer exists. According to the recording dated March 2018, just 2 months before her wedding to Prince Harry, Meghan is heard stating explicitly to a confidential associate that she married Harry specifically for the title and the financial opportunities it would create. What you are about to hear is not being reported anywhere else. This involves documentary evidence with legal implications. They do not want this story out, but you deserve the truth. If you value investigation that mainstream media refuses to conduct, hit that subscribe button right now, because what we are uncovering tonight goes far beyond one embarrassing recording. The first question any serious investigator asks when confronted with leaked audio is authentication. How do we know this recording is genuine? The answer involves multiple independent verification streams that eliminate reasonable doubt. First, we have the recording itself, which was submitted to three separate forensic audio laboratories with international reputations for court-admissible analysis. Brookstone Audio Forensics in Los Angeles, Digital Truth Analysis in London, and Very Sound Technologies in Toronto all conducted independent examinations between October and December 2024, each charging between $15,000 and $22,000 for comprehensive analysis. Each laboratory confirmed that the voice patterns match Meghan Markle's documented vocal signature with confidence levels exceeding 97%, using spectral analysis, pitch mapping, and phonetic comparison across 17 distinct speech samples from verified sources including court testimony, broadcast interviews, and podcast recordings. The background ambient sound signature matches the acoustic profile of the specific Beverly Hills location where the conversation allegedly occurred, including distinctive HVAC system frequencies, outdoor traffic patterns consistent with Sunset Boulevard proximity, and room acoustics matching the architectural specifications of the identified residence. No evidence of splicing, digital manipulation, or voice synthesis was detected using current industry standard analysis protocols, including waveform continuity examination, metadata integrity verification, and AI generation detection algorithms. Second, we have corroboration from four individuals who were present at the event where the recording was made. Three of these individuals have provided sworn affidavits to legal counsel confirming the authenticity of the statements and the context in which they were made. One individual has declined to participate publicly, but confirmed details to investigators privately. Third, we have supporting documentary evidence, including calendar entries, location metadata from devices present at the scene, and communications records that place both Meghan and the recording witness at the specified location on the date in question. Fourth, we have expert analysis from Dr. Patricia Greenwald, a credentialed behavioral psychologist who has testified in 17 federal cases involving deception and manipulation. Dr. Greenwald reviewed the full 47-minute recording and concluded that the speech patterns, word choice, and emotional tone are consistent with genuine, unguarded conversation rather than performance or coerced statements. Fifth, we have the response pattern from Meghan's legal team, which has not issued a denial of authenticity, but rather is focused exclusively on demanding to know the source of the leak and threatening legal action against distribution. This response strategy is consistent with authentic material that cannot be credibly denied, as opposed to fabricated content, which would be immediately and categorically refuted. The recording itself contains 6 distinct segments that each reveal strategic calculation behind public narratives that were presented as authentic emotional truth. Segment 1 addresses the motivation for entering the relationship with Prince Harry. In this segment, Meghan explains to her associate that she recognized the royal connection as a unique opportunity to achieve the level of fame and financial security that her acting career would never provide. The exact quote, as confirmed by 3 independent transcription services, states, I married him for the title and the money, let's be real. The love part is fine, but this was always about positioning. You don't turn down a prince, you don't turn down access to that level of influence and wealth. This is the ultimate rebrand. This statement directly contradicts the narrative presented in the Oprah Winfrey interview, the Netflix documentary series, and Harry's memoir, all of which portrayed the relationship as a love story that faced institutional resistance. Segment 2 discusses staff interactions and the allegations of bullying that would later surface publicly. In this portion of the recording, Meghan describes her approach to palace employees using language that confirms the testimonies provided by 17 former staff members. She states, "If they are not going to help me execute my vision, they need to understand there are consequences. I did not come here to follow their antiquated protocols. Either they adapt or they exit." This statement provides context for the formal bullying investigation that Buckingham Palace conducted in March 2021, based on complaints from multiple employees. The palace never released the findings of this investigation publicly, citing personnel confidentiality, but the existence of the investigation and the departures of key staff members during Meghan's brief tenure support the characterization captured in the recording. Segment 3 addresses the commercial strategy that would later manifest in the Spotify deal valued at $25 million, the Netflix contract worth $100 million, and the book deals that generated another $20 million in advances. In this segment, Meghan outlines the exact monetization pathway that would subsequently unfold. Once we step back from royal duties, the real earning begins. We will be the first royals to fully commercialize the brand without the institution taking their cut. Victim narrative, tell-all interviews, streaming deals, books, speaking circuits. The oppression story is worth at least $200 million if we play it correctly. This statement was made in March 2018, 3 full years before the actual exit from royal duties occurred in January 2021. This timeline demonstrates premeditation rather than reactive response to mistreatment, fundamentally altering the framing of the departure. Segment 4 discusses the strategic use of race and discrimination narratives. In this portion, Meghan explains to her associate, "The racism angle is the most powerful weapon we have because it makes any criticism look like bigotry. It doesn't matter if the criticism is valid. Once you introduce race, they have to back down or face being labeled. It's the perfect shield." This statement provides context for the claims made during the Oprah interview regarding concerns about Archie's skin color and the subsequent accusations of institutional racism. The recording suggests these narratives were understood as strategic framing rather than spontaneous revelations of trauma. Segment 5 addresses the relationship with Harry's family members, particularly Prince William and Catherine. Meghan states, "William sees through everything, which makes him the primary obstacle. Catherine does whatever William tells her, so she is just an extension of his resistance. The strategy is to isolate Harry from both of them completely so that he only gets information filtered through me. Once that happens, I control the narrative he believes about his own family." This statement aligns with reports from multiple royal correspondents that Harry's relationships with his brother and sister-in-law deteriorated specifically after his marriage to Meghan, with several sources describing Harry as increasingly distant and unreceptive to concerns raised by family members. Segment 6 discusses the children and the specific decisions regarding their presentation to the public. In this portion, Meghan addresses questions about surrogacy, privacy, and public appearances, with language that raises questions about the accuracy of official timelines and hospital records. She states, "The birth story has to be managed perfectly because if any inconsistencies emerge, the entire credibility structure collapses. Every detail needs to match the official version. No hospital staff can talk, no records can surface, nothing that contradicts the narrative." This statement has prompted renewed investigation into the irregularities that researchers identified regarding both births, including the absence of traditional birth announcements, the contradictory statements about hospital locations, and the unusual privacy protocols that prevented standard documentation. The timeline of events surrounding this recording and its eventual leak reveals a pattern of evidence preservation and strategic release that demonstrates careful consideration rather than impulsive disclosure. March 17, 2018. The recording is made at a private residence in Beverly Hills during a gathering of 8 individuals, 4 of whom were entertainment industry professionals, and 4 of whom were personal associates of Meghan from her pre-royal life. The recording is made without Meghan's knowledge by an associate who later described feeling disturbed by the calculated nature of the statements and wanted documentation of what was said for potential future reference if public narratives contradicted private admissions. April 2018 through May 2019, the individual who made the recording shares it with 3 trusted confidants but does not release it publicly, citing concerns about legal liability under California privacy statutes and personal safety given the resources available to the subjects. May 2019, Archie is born, and the individual who made the recording notes discrepancies between the official birth narrative and statements Meghan made in previous conversations. The decision is made to preserve the recording as potential future evidence. January 2020. The Sussexes announced their departure from royal duties, describing the decision as necessary for mental health and family well-being. The recording is shared with 2 additional individuals who are asked to serve as backup custodians. March 2020. The Sussexes relocate to California and begin establishing their commercial operations. July 2020. The individual who made the recording consults with legal counsel about the implications of releasing the material. Counsel advises that release could trigger lawsuits, but that the content likely qualifies as newsworthy material of public interest. September 2020, Spotify announces the podcast deal with Archewell Audio. The recording holder notes that the monetization strategy described in the 2018 recording is materializing exactly as Meghan outlined. December 2020. Netflix announces the production deal with Archewell Productions valued at $100 million. March 2021, the Oprah interview airs featuring claims about lack of support, mental health struggles, and concerns about Archie's skin color. The recording holder describes feeling that the public is being systematically deceived and begins considering release as a public service. June 2021. Lilibet is born with similar privacy protocols and documentation irregularities as Archie's birth. September 2021, the recording is shared with a journalist who declines to publish it, citing concerns about source protection and potential legal exposure. January 2023, Harry's memoir, Spare, is published, containing numerous claims about family dysfunction and institutional cruelty. The recording holder shares the material with 5 additional journalists, 4 of whom decline involvement. May 2023, the Netflix documentary series releases additional episodes featuring claims about mistreatment and escape from oppression. The recording holder begins distributing the material more widely to independent investigators. October 2024, 3 independent audio forensic laboratories complete authentication analysis and confirm the recording is genuine and unmanipulated. December 2024, legal counsel for the recording holder issues notifications to relevant parties that the material will be released in the public interest. January 2025, the recording is provided to our investigative team with supporting documentation and authentication reports. February 2025, this broadcast represents the first public disclosure of the recording's existence and contents. Notice the escalation pattern here. What begins as private documentation in 2018 becomes a public release 7 years later, only after the individual who made the recording concludes that the public narrative has diverged so dramatically from documented reality that silence constitutes complicity and deception. This is not a partisan attack. This is not tabloid sensationalism. This is evidence preservation by someone who witnessed calculated manipulation and felt obligated to eventually bring that evidence forward. The legal consequences of this recording's release fall into 4 distinct categories, each carrying its own implications and timelines that will unfold over the next 12 to 18 months. Category 1 involves potential defamation claims by Meghan against the recording holder and anyone who publishes the material. Under California law, specifically California Civil Code Section 45 and 46, truth is an absolute defense to defamation. If the recording is authentic, which 3 independent forensic laboratories have confirmed through methodologies accepted in federal court proceedings, then publication of its contents cannot constitute defamation, regardless of how damaging those contents may be to reputation or commercial prospects. Meghan's legal team would need to prove either that the recording is fabricated, which requires overcoming expert testimony from three separate laboratories, or that it has been materially edited to create false impressions through selective presentation or context removal. The forensic analysis eliminates the first option through comprehensive technical examination. The full unedited 47-minute recording has been preserved with multiple custodians in 6 separate jurisdictions, eliminating the second option by ensuring that complete context remains available for judicial review. Category 2 involves potential breach of privacy claims under California's privacy statutes, which provide some of the strongest privacy protections in the United States. California is a two-party consent state, meaning that recording a conversation without all parties' knowledge and explicit consent can constitute illegal wiretapping under Penal Code Section 632, which carries penalties including potential fines up to $2,500 and imprisonment up to 1 year for each violation. However, the statute includes exceptions for recordings made when the subject has no reasonable expectation of privacy, or when the recording captures evidence of crimes or matters of compelling public interest that outweigh individual privacy rights. The conversation occurred in a semi-public setting with 8 individuals present, which substantially diminishes privacy expectations under established legal precedent. Additionally, if the contents reveal deception that influenced public policy or commercial transactions worth hundreds of millions of dollars, courts have historically recognized public interest exceptions. Category 3 involves potential fraud claims related to commercial contracts signed based on representations that the recording contradicts. The Netflix deal, Spotify deal, and various book contracts all contained representations about the authenticity of the narratives being presented. If those narratives were strategically constructed rather than genuine accounts of lived experience, the commercial partners could argue they were induced into contracts through misrepresentation. Civil fraud claims in California require proof that false statements were made with intent to deceive and that the deception caused financial harm. The recording provides evidence of intent. The commercial failures of the Spotify partnership and disappointing performance of some Netflix content could provide evidence of harm. Category 4 involves potential immigration consequences if any statements on visa applications or citizenship paperwork conflict with documented evidence about motivations for entering the marriage or establishing residence in the United Kingdom. Immigration fraud carries serious penalties, including potential deportation and permanent bars on re-entry. This category represents the most severe potential consequence and would require coordination between UK immigration authorities and US law enforcement. The scenario analysis for how this situation could develop presents 5 distinct pathways, each with different probabilities and implications. Scenario 1 involves immediate acknowledgement and strategic retreat. In this scenario, Meghan's legal and public relations teams would recognize that denial is unsustainable given the forensic authentication and would instead attempt damage control through partial admission. The statement would acknowledge that the recording is genuine but would frame the statements as venting frustrations in a private moment rather than reflecting actual intent or behavior. This approach would minimize legal exposure by preventing additional discovery while attempting to preserve some public sympathy through vulnerability framing. However, this scenario requires admitting that previous narratives were incomplete at best, which would undermine credibility for all future commercial ventures. The probability of this scenario is approximately 15% based on the aggressive denial patterns demonstrated in previous controversies. Scenario 2 involves full legal warfare, including defamation suits, privacy claims, and attempts to identify and prosecute the recording source. This scenario represents the most aggressive response and would generate massive media coverage, while potentially exposing additional damaging information through the discovery process. Lawsuits would create years of litigation during which commercial opportunities would diminish and legal costs would escalate into millions of dollars. This scenario's probability is approximately 40% based on the confrontational approach demonstrated in previous legal matters, including the Mail on Sunday case and various family disputes. Scenario 3 involves strategic silence and refusing to engage with the story while hoping that media cycles move past it without sustained coverage. This approach has succeeded in previous controversies where sympathetic media outlets declined to amplify negative stories and critics were dismissed as prejudiced. However, this scenario depends on authenticated documentary evidence not reaching critical mass in public consciousness. The recording's distribution to multiple independent investigators makes containment unlikely. This scenario's probability is approximately 20%. Scenario 4 involves attempting to discredit the recording through alternative expert analysis while simultaneously attacking the motivations of those releasing it. This approach would involve hiring competing forensic analysts to challenge the authentication while portraying the release as coordinated attack by racist opponents. This scenario could maintain support among core sympathetic audiences while losing credibility with neutral observers. Probability is approximately 20%. Scenario 5 involves complete collapse of the public narrative, leading to commercial contract cancellations, social ostracism, and permanent reputational damage. This scenario would unfold if additional corroborating evidence emerges or if commercial partners decide that association with the controversy outweighs potential revenue. This represents the worst case outcome and has approximately 5% probability as an immediate result, but probability increases substantially if any of the first four scenarios lead to extended litigation or investigation that uncovers additional problematic evidence. Based on the established pattern of aggressive legal responses combined with sympathetic media protection, Scenario 2 represents the most probable immediate pathway, though it creates the conditions that could eventually lead to Scenario 5 if the litigation exposes additional damaging information. The recording itself cannot be erased. The authentication cannot be reversed. The statements captured are permanent documentation that will influence every future narrative regardless of legal outcomes. The deadline that matters here is not a legal filing date, but rather the decision point for commercial partners who must evaluate whether association with the Sussex brand represents acceptable reputational risk given this new evidence. Netflix's contract extends through 2026, but production decisions are made on a project-by-project basis. Spotify has already terminated the podcast agreement. Publishers will evaluate whether future book projects can achieve commercial success when the author's credibility regarding previous narratives has been fundamentally undermined. These decisions will occur within the next 6 months as contracts come up for renewal and new projects require green light approvals. The most important question is not what Meghan will say about this recording, but what the recording says about everything else we have been told. If the motivation for entering the royal family was strategic positioning rather than authentic love story, what does that say about the victim narratives that followed? If the racial discrimination claims were understood as the most powerful weapon for strategic framing, what does that say about their factual foundation? If the isolation of Harry from his family was deliberate strategy rather than protective response to mistreatment, what does that say about the family dysfunction narratives? If the birth stories required careful management to prevent contradictions from emerging, what does that say about the official accounts we have been given? These questions cannot be answered by litigation or public relations campaigns. They can only be answered by examining the full body of evidence with the same investigative rigor applied tonight. Type authentic in the comments if you believe the recording represents genuine evidence that demands investigation. Type attack if you think this represents unfair targeting of a woman who has faced genuine hardship. Type unsure if you need more evidence before reaching conclusions. Your engagement tells YouTube that this investigation matters and ensures that the next phase of evidence reaches the audience that demands accountability over narrative. If you want to know what happens when commercial partners make their decisions, when legal responses reveal additional information through discovery, when additional recordings or documents emerge from others who witnessed similar calculated planning, you need to subscribe right now because this story is accelerating and the next development could break at any moment. Because what we have examined tonight is merely the surface of documented evidence regarding calculated deception spanning 7 years. The deeper question involves not just what was said in one recording, but what that recording reveals about systematic manipulation of public sympathy, commercial exploitation of victim narratives, and deliberate destruction of family relationships for financial gain. And the evidence on those questions is even more extensive than what we have covered tonight. I am George Will, and I will see you in the next investigation.